Hey, boys and girls, we're gonna hit two senses today or tonight. We're gonna hit smell and taste because those two are intertwined. If you'll remember, in one of the stations we did the other day, or when we first started the unit, you all noticed kind of got sort of a sense on how connected they are with the jelly beans. So we may do that again as we explain it a little bit. So, but we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully, I can keep this under 20 minutes or so. First thing I want to mention is pheromones. These are chemical signals released by organisms to communicate with other members of the species. It's up in the air whether humans have pheromones. Some scientists say yes, others say no. We've all been around those people who have BO. We've all been around those people that, for whatever reason, smell really good. So, science is still not quite sure, but there are other species in the world that do emit pheromones. And, I'm sure most of y'all know what that is, what those are, but I did want to at least make sure I mentioned them as we kind of move on. I'll go ahead and play this video. It's kind of short.
Which of your five senses do you think is the most precise? Anthony here for D-News, and last week Vsauce did this crazy interesting video about what the human eye's resolution would be in megapixels. Spoilers, it is not great. Go check that out if you haven't. If our vision is discount bargain basement hardware, I was thinking which sense has the most detail? New research says that it's our sense of smell. So wait, how do we even compare the resolution of different senses? You need some sort of standardization there. You can talk about vision in terms of the wavelengths and intensities of light we can see. Hearing is all about frequencies and loudness. Now that's pretty easy. We can break that stuff down and know that we can see somewhere between 2 and 7 million different colors and hear about 350,000 different tones. Smell is a little bit harder. Scents come from molecules, these volatile chemicals coming off the thing you're smelling and reaching your nose. Then they head up your nose to neurons called the olfactory receptors that are chilling behind your nasal passages. The only neurons you have, by the way, that are exposed to air. And the molecules bind to tiny hair-like cilia on the neurons, and then boom, you've got a smell. The thinking up until now has been that you've got hundreds of receptors that are all sensitive to different molecules. The smell of a rose is 275 different molecules, all being detected by different olfactory receptors. And it was assumed that with all possible combinations, we can smell 10,000 different scents. Except, whoops, we never actually did any experiments on that. Because like I said, y'all, smell is hard. This new research took 128 different odor molecules and mixed them into different configurations, some that were very similar, some that were very different, and then had 28 different adults smell all the combinations to see how many they recognized as unique. Now, there's a lot of margin for reporting error here, obviously, but taking that into consideration, the researchers think we can detect 1 trillion different stimuli. Even comparing that to the high end of visible colors, 7 million, that means your nose is 150,000 times more sensitive than your eyes, and over 2.8 million times more sensitive than your ears. We already know that smell and memory are linked because your olfactory bulb and your limbic system are strongly linked. It's got this direct highway to your amygdala and your hippocampus, which process emotion and associative learning. Now,
we'll get to those a little later when we get to learning and memory and all that stuff.
This is just me thinking, and it is not part of the study, but knowing how much more sensitive and precise smell is than sight or hearing, that connection begins to make a lot more sense. So let the sense with the most detail, right, be the one that powers your memory recall. Maybe that's why my memory is bad, because my allergies always keep me stuffed up. Listen. What smell always brings up a memory for you? Let me know and subscribe for more D-News.
It is an interesting question. Do you all have smells that bring back memories? I know I have a couple. When I was a kid growing up, my mom always used to buy some sort of purple shampoo with a kangaroo on it, back when I actually had hair. And that I think my wife has bought that once or twice, and I'll smell that and be transform back to being in middle or high school, taking a shower with that smell. So we'll get into the connections that smell has with memory and learning when we get to those units, because it is very strong. Couple things to know about smell. All of the senses we've talked about, the whatever's being sensed has to sort of travel through a couple different places before that actually gets to the sensory neurons, to whatever the neurons are. In the eyes, it's the rods and cones. In the ears, it's that basilic membrane that has all those hairs in it. But the sound, the light's got to pass through, the cornea, the iris, the pupil, and then the lens, and then it hits the retina with all the rods and cones. So in both cases, they go through a bunch of things. And smell is no different. However, smell does have one unique difference in that those, and I think the guy mentioned it, that these sensory neurons are the only ones that are actually exposed directly to air. Your rods and cones are in your eyeball, back behind it. In your eyeball, and your hearing neurons are in the basilic membrane, and actually they're floating in water. So these are a little bit different. The smell essentially here's your face. It comes up through your nose, and there's really not a whole lot of stuff to go through. I mean, the smell, or the molecules, will attach to these olfactory bulbs, and then boom, you hit your olfactory nerve. Actually, I'm going the wrong way. So yeah. So this is what you're being smelled, or the substance, whether it's dust, skunk oil, whatever, maybe food that you're eating, whatever those molecules are, they bind to this mucus layer, which is where the olfactory hairs are, or the cilium. Of course, then the dendrites fire, and boom, you've got all these, then everything happens. So we'll get a little more into that. But as I mentioned, smell and taste are connected. And we've all been in a restaurant where we've had that nice, wonderful smell of food, and then you start getting hungry, and you can almost taste it just through your smell. And there have even been times when, even if you've been driving down the road and you get a real strong skunk smell, there are times when you can almost taste it, that bitter, nasty oil. So they are connected.
Hoi, leuk dat je kijkt naar Live Hunters. Mijn naam is Sascha, ik ben Cedric. En vandaag gaan we naar de voedselbeurs in Houten om wat hapjes te presenteren van ons culinair hoogstaand restaurant.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. That was something French. Anyways, some stats to know about smell and gender and age. We have our best sense of smell when we hit the ages between 40 and 49. That whole decade, we have our best sense. And women have a tendency to have a better sense of smell than men. Actually, men hit their highest between 30 and 39. So at 30 and 39, men's smell starts to dip, and women's smell gets a little better until about 49 to when it starts to dip. So just kind of keep that in the back of your minds as you all are kind of studying. So I want to make sure, we'll go back to the smell real quick and make sure we know sort of the route that the smell goes. The molecule, I don't know why I couldn't think of that, The molecule adheres to the mucus layer, and whatever that fires, that olfactory hair does the transduction. Remember, transduction is changing the outside physical thing to the neurological thing. So the olfactory triggers the dendrites, which trigger the olfactory receptor cells, which then that travels along the axon, and into the olfactory nerves, and then the olfactory bulb. So that is the route. Now we move on to taste. And the actual sense of taste has a name. It's called gestation. Gestation is a sense of taste. And it's a little different. These are interesting because you can sort of see these on the tongue. But it's a little different than probably what we're thinking. Our taste buds are actually the receptors for taste. This is usually on the upper side of the tongue. You don't get much on the underside. There are a few, but not enough to really mention. But we can see our taste buds for the most part. This is a taste bud that has been enlarged. They used to think that and I can remember seeing this growing up in my health classes. They had a map of the tongue, and certain places were responsible for salty taste, certain places were responsible for sweet, others were responsible for bitter. And what we have found, and this is fairly new in the last probably 5 or 10 years, is that theory is actually wrong. And we may test that. Probably not tomorrow. Well, maybe tomorrow, yeah. With some different ways. But what we found is taste is pretty much comprehensive all over the tongue. Fast forward because we're going to do that in class. So there are 4, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 primary tastes: sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. Until recently, they have discovered a new sort of a 5th quality, and it's hard to kind of explain what this is. The name of it is umami, U-M-A-M-I. And essentially that is a flavor that is associated with MSGs. Now, if you'll remember, MSGs are monosodium glucosamate or something like that. All right, but that was a what?
Monosodium glutamate.
Monosodium glutamate, that's right. And remember, this is a chemical that mirrors neurotransmitters and can cause headaches, or causes headaches in some people because of the interference it causes with neurotransmission. So there's a lot of things that MSGs are in. Chinese food, I think, is the one that's most popular, but it's in a lot of things that we don't think about. And so if you get headaches after eating certain foods, it's probably because of the MSGs. Recently they have discovered that we have the ability to taste these. These are all things that MSGs are in. Of course, you've got the Chinese food, seasonings, accent. This is some sort of flavor additive, wakes up food flavor. Fast food is full of MSGs. Look at this. Cup noodles, MSG flavor. So, things like Campbell Soups, Hostess products, Doritos, Lay's tater chips, ramen noodles, Betty Crocker, Hamburger Helper, Heinz canned gravy, Swanson meals, Kraft salad dressings, especially the healthy low-fat ones. These all contain MSGs. So these are things to be aware about, or to be aware of when you eat, or that you eat these. If there's enough of them, that can cause some issues with neurotransmission. You know, anytime you see hydrolyzed vegetable protein, that is another name for monosodium glutamate. And I want to make sure we know this. You know, we talk about things being spicy. Spicy is actually not a taste quality. That is more of a sensation or a reaction. But it's spicy, you know, like the blazing wings at BW3s, all right, is actually not a taste quality. As I mentioned earlier, taste and smell work together. We're going to do an experiment maybe tomorrow where I will give you a piece of onion and a piece of an apple, and you will be blindfolded, and hopefully you will not be able to tell the difference, at least with your nose closed. And then once you open your nose, then boom, it'll hit. All right, but much of the taste of an onion is actually the odor and not the flavor. So if you are pinching your nose, you may not be able to tell the difference. And here's sort of how they do work together. You'll notice that, you know, obviously those two places are fairly similar. Actually, I'm going to move on. That doesn't make sense. All right, I do want to talk about, we're going to do this experiment too. We're going to look at people who see how many of you all are super tasters. Generally, these people have more taste buds for bitter flavors and are a lot more sensitive than regular tasters. And what we'll be able to do is we're going to paint our tongues, and you're going to see, and what that does, that sort of highlights all those little receptor cells or receptor bumps where we can count them. So, but super tasters tend to dislike things such as diet soda, right? Because it just has that bitter flavor to them. But these people, you know, are always looking at the different perspectives. You know, if you're looking at super tasters from a evolutionary perspective, they may have a survival advantage because most poisons are bitter. So just kind of keep that in mind. But this is what a tongue of a super taster might look like. In the Fungiform papillae, which is actually the round things that you see, you see in this picture, there's all kinds of them. All right. Well, then there's the opposite end of the spectrum, which is non-tasters, which they have fewer, and they are loosely arranged and much larger. They're not as small. So we'll be able to see the difference between, hopefully we have a super taster and a non-taster in our class, and we'll be able to see between all of them. So this is sort of the old scenario. We don't really go by this anymore. This is similar to what I remember seeing. All right, and some people have tongues that look like this. They're very fissured, and there's really no reason for it. It's just happens sometimes. So now here is sort of a nice little graph that sort of looks at the difference between super tasters, normal tasters, and hypo tasters. And you're looking at basically you're looking at the density of papillae. So when you have more than 1 per millimeter squared, then you're looking at super taster. You have 0.3 to 1. You're looking at a normal taster. You have less than 1/3 per square millimeter, then you're looking at a hypo taster. But here's sort of really what the importance of this is, how things taste and how things are different. Super tasters, when you look like things like coffee, they tend to avoid coffee or they add lots of cream and sugar to it. All right. I am probably, I always thought I was a hypo taster, but actually, looking at this, I may be more of a super taster because I add a lot of cream and a lot of sugar to my coffee. A normal taster might add a touch of cream and sugar. A hypo taster is indifferent or prefers strong dark coffee. And if you think about it, if you don't have the same amount of taste buds as other people, you're going to want or need more of that taste, just so it's just not bland. So that's pot coffee or bitterness. With saltiness, super tasters love saltiness. Kara, would you say that I love saltiness?
OMG.
So yes, again, I'm probably close to more of a super taster. Normal taster sort of like saltiness. A hypo taster is somewhat indifferent. Spicy or hot foods, super tasters tend to avoid because they you know, it's Jake, quit it. They tend to avoid that. Normal taster, they like it. They don't really seek it out or not seek it out. But hypo tasters, they seek out the spicy hot food. Again, you're looking for that's hypo tasters tend to see everything as being bland. They need more stuff to get those neurons firing. Of course, looking at acquired taste for alcohol. Super tasters, generally, they're unlikely to do that because alcohol burns and tastes like gasoline. A normal taster may be somewhat likely to acquire a taste, but hypo tasters are most likely to get a taste for alcohol because to them it kind of tastes somewhat sweet. And then super tasters are not very picky eaters. Remember, these are all generally speaking. Normal taster they're normal, I guess. But hypo tasters are very bold. Then they seek out very intense flavors. Again, because they don't have the taste receptors like everybody else does. So. And that's pretty much it for taste and smell. We'll do those experiments probably tomorrow, just so you can kind of see and experience. I know some of you we've already done one or two of those, but I think it'll be good. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Peace out.